So yeah, is we're going to talk about moms in Star Wars. Is right here we've got here. See the immersive background always throws me up there. We've got a ton of you know literal moms and female mother figures in Star Wars. And you'll see our selection, and we'll talk about these. And again, if you've got other ideas about it, and you've got to mention it in the chat, because probably any one of these figures is important enough in the Star Wars universe that they could have their entire episode. But we're just going to kind of hit the high points. So who wants to pick one and start talking?
Well, Padme would be probably a brief one. It's funny because even though the prequel trilogy retcons it in Return of the Jedi, when Luke asks Leia, "Do you remember your mother, your real mother?"
Mhm.
And Leia says a few words. She died when I was ever young, kind, all that kind of stuff. And it feels, after you watch the prequels, it very much does echo Padme, even though, of course, the continuity doesn't really make sense anymore. And that was kind of surprising, because it's like you can see a lot of Padme in Luke and Leia. And it's kind of weird because it's like she didn't raise them at all, but the influence is very much there, which I thought was kind of neat, even though that's a very brief, all too brief moment in the movie, or in the films in general, because she didn't really have anybody that she was like mentoring or anything before then.
Yeah, is it is funny, and I mean it's like I guess, and I assume that George was writing it in retrospect that way, and he was going back and it's like, okay, these are things that happened in the original trilogy. This is how Leia is this strong, independent woman. Is she can't come from anything else other than a strong, independent woman, who's just as quick to pick up a blaster in negotiations as anything else. But that kind of brings us to another one of the ones up there is, Padme's the Padme's traits in Leia are probably really not from Padme, but if you look at that picture up there, who else is that? That is name escapes me, but Bail Organa's wife is Leia's foster mother.
Breha Organa. I
There
did
you
look
go.
it up though after we were coming up short in the. I'll admit, but yeah, Breha Organa. Yeah.
So we can only assume. I mean, we see a lot of like Bail Organa, as you know, Jimmy Smits, never ages, is in everything. But
True.
we don't see. Do we see anything of her other than like this shot of her cradling the baby and like we're gonna? No. But
I mean, maybe molecules and after talking gives a signal. No.
Oh, too soon.
But yeah, no, we see nothing. We it's a shame because there's definitely some sort of story to be told there in the intervening years. Yeah.
Absolutely, because I mean, we see young Leia. We know that this has happened throughout Leia's life. Is that we see this in Rebels, is that she's been a resistance fighter and this kind of leader from the beginning. And I always assume that that's from her adoptive parents. It's got to be. They've got to play that kind of part, and that's got to be a thing. So let's
Yeah.
keep it going and talking about adoptive parents. Is Gio, what do you think about our other kind of adoptive parent in here? We've talked about who raised Leia. Let's talk about Aunt Beru, who's raised Luke.
Yeah, well, she's been there with Uncle Owen, from as much of Luke's significant life as can be, really. He was just a couple of days old when Obi-Wan handed him over at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and you don't really get the feeling that Uncle Owen's characteristics are the good in Luke so much, and there's definitely that kind of contrast between the bitter, cynical, pessimistic view that Uncle Owen has, and the much more kind of hopeful and softer, gentler character that Aunt Beru has. And I think it's a really good part of Star Wars in that there's so much about families, but to take it back to the original trilogy, it was very centrally, a father-son kind of story paradigm and conflict, and it really speaks to how Star Wars has a lot to offer to a lot of people in terms of character, because you have strong biological mothers and you've got strong adoptive and foster mothers that have imparted, even if it's behind the scenes between films, between visual appearances, have to have had a substantial role in creating the character that we see on screen, in Leia as it is with Breha Organa, or in Luke with Aunt Beru. So I think that's a really nice aspect to remind ourselves in Star Wars, that the mothering aspect is a strong part that shapes the heroes that we know best and spend the most time with, and that's not to be forgotten and not to be taken lightly at all.
Yeah. And Catherine, I know Aunt Beru was on your list of to talk about. What do you have to say, or what are your thoughts on Aunt Beru?
Beru seems to be the encouraging one. Like, she loved the idea that, oh, he's not a farmer, and he has too much of his father in him, and it's like, who his father is, right? Like Owen gives her that kind of look. It's like how that turned out, and she doesn't care. She's just like, oh, it's so wonderful, and it's like, yeah, he definitely got some of it. Luke got some of that headstrong spirit from Beru, like go out and try fast, take chances type thing.
Yeah.
So that's so that's where Beru comes in a bit. I mean, I know she didn't get to say anything in episode 2 really, and I don't know if she'll. I know she's back for the Kenobi series. I don't know if she'll have anything more to say, but that would be interesting to see that kind of dynamic revisited. Like, how's she gonna react to the way Owen's freaking out about Obi-Wan? She's like, oh, does she know he's not a farmer yet? Because it seems like even in the trailer, little Luke being all excited, pretending to be like an X-wing pilot or whatever. Sounds like Beru is somebody who would encourage that, whereas Owen, if he saw Luke doing that, would take away the helmet and stuff. It's like, get back to work.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great thing about, like we were talking about, is Leia's upbringing. We don't know. We've seen the little bits that we saw in Rebels. That's another story to be told. Well, they're about to tell and fill in some of the story, at least, of Luke's upbringing. There's always these little bits of the universe and little pieces of the story that can be filled in and fleshed out. And I really hope that we see this. As I, chose the older Aunt Beru here, is I actually that graphic is covering up the younger Aunt Beru holding baby Luke, but we're gonna see her soon. It is the same actress, I believe, as Cass. That was
the same Australian actress, Bonnie Peace. I believe.
So we're gonna see some more of that story, and we're gonna find out more about these people is not the twins' natural mothers, but they've definitely gone and
that was another thing at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Owen is very, he's looking out on the horizon, being very serene about it, and thinking about what he's about to take on, fully understanding what Obi-Wan expects. And Beru doesn't have any of that. She's just excited that, oh, cool, I get, we're gonna raise a son, and this is wonderful. And it's like,
Yeah.
even in that one little scene, you get the difference in you understand the difference of what's coming, the
Yeah.
difference of that relationship.
There's one thing actually that just because I think looking ahead to this, that Anu Baru is definitely a character we wanted to mention, because again, she's one of the characters that, in a way, when you think of like the strong mother types, it's easy to omit when there's Shmi and Padme and Leia and so on. But there's just trying to recall the exact. So when Luke is kind of despondent and he's kind of like walking out of the kind of kitchenette area, and he's like, "Looks like I'm going nowhere," and then Aunt Beru kind of turns to Uncle Owen and says, he can't stay forever. Most of his friends have gone. It means so much to him, to like join the Imperial Academy. And Uncle Owen just says, I'll make it up to him next year. And Aunt Beru, I think, says, Luke's, there's more to him than he's not just a farmer.
Yeah, he's not just a farmer. She knows and she sees that in him, and Aunt Beru gone and Uncle Owen gone too soon. But I look forward to seeing some more of them. And I mean, when I think of mother figures in Star Wars, she would be the top of my list, because I am an OT person. Is that is the first mother we see, and we hear her called Aunt Beru. We know it's Aunt Beru, but we don't see a mother for Luke. We don't know anyone else who's raised them. These are his parental figures when, they're killed, and it leads him on his hero's journey. But yeah, that's who I think of first, because that's the first person we see in 1977.
That's a fair point for sure. I guess it comes into like when our exposure was to Star Wars, perhaps.
Exactly.
There'll definitely be different generations who will be like, oh no, well, Shmi's the first mother that I saw, but then your parents didn't show you the right order.
Well, and you can't fault some of the people too, is kids that grew up, and the first ones that they saw is the first ones that they would see in the theater. What's out is, I'm sure there will be entire generations, and we respect as well, OT people, is the motherly figure of Leia that we'll talk about in a little bit. But you said Shmi is, who wants to take it? Who wants to talk? Let's talk about her.
So, they're living their simple lives, not really expecting much. And, because Anakin has the whole spirit of wanting to help everybody, being so selfless, she allows him to do something that she's terrified of, which is the whole pod racing thing. But I think an interesting moment is that she kind of knows what this means, that Qui-Gon, like she picks up on the fact that Qui-Gon has been eyeing the kid. And you saw how despondent she was when he told her that, I'm not actually here to free slaves.
Yeah.
And yet it's like, it's like, okay, you're not here to free us, but you're really interested in what's going on with my kid. And it's like she suspects what's going on, but she hasn't really committed to it. And so after the pod race, when Qui-Gon says, he's been freed, you notice the look on her face isn't elation. It's kind of shock, because she knows exactly what this means. He's going to leave her. And on the one hand, yes, she's happy that he's going to leave and have a better life. Obviously happy he's no longer a slave. But she doesn't allow Anakin to see that type of elation, because she knows she doesn't want Anakin to think that she's excited at the fact that, oh, I'm not going to see you again. Because she kind of knows when she sends him away, despite that he says, I will come back and free you, Mom, I promise. She knows he's not coming back. Or that's what she believes, clearly. So why she says, which is why she tells him, don't turn away. And yeah, I admit, because of George Lucas's shoddy directing, it doesn't come off as nicely as it could have. But I thought that was a really, as far as mothers of Star Wars go, one of the most powerful double entendre scenes in the whole saga. When she restrains herself from that excitement, and then when she says, be brave, don't look back.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so good.
Yeah. She's the kind of iconic, strong single parent, and because families can be fractured, and it's not always the way that characters in these kind of coming of age stories brought about. I mean, often there's family conflict, and Shmi, although she doesn't have too much screen time, she does have that presence, and I guess that's partly due to the acting as well, by Pernilla August. She I think her expressions when she's having that conversation that you mentioned with Qui-Gon, and then when Qui-Gon then gives the news to Anakin that he's been freed once he wins the Boonta Eve race. That look that between like Jake Lloyd and Pernilla August that they exchange, there's so much in that that it really reminds me how, whatever that we say about the dialogue and the script and the writing, some of these performances can really burn themselves into our memory just on expression alone, and letting the other character, that is the John Williams score, really bring us up and down with our emotions. And I think that maybe one of the most standout moments of using the return to the binary sunset and the Force theme in The Phantom Menace is that moment. In fact, in the entire prequel trilogy, the moment of kind of defiance against like the diabolical structure that is the slavery on Tatooine, and how Anakin is walking away from that, but he's doing that with the so-called blessings and full support unconditionally from his mother. Shmi represents that kind of unconditional love and support. And although we don't get too much interaction or too much history between Shmi and Anakin, it's pretty safe to say that all his kind of dark tendencies came from the kind of harsh surroundings and kind of encroaching structures around him afterward. He was born into slavery, which is obviously absolutely awful, but Shmi gave him everything that he could, and I think it's a fair extrapolation to say that the good-natured aspects of Anakin's character will be coming from Shmi. They're not coming from Watto or any of the other characters in Mos Eisley.
Well,
and I think that's the key part that Shmi plays.
Well, I want to just talk about the importance of Shmi in how much, and it's in a dark way, but how much Anakin cares for her, loves her, is his attachment inevitably becomes his undoing. It starts with the whole path, the saga down the turn to the dark side is, when he finds out that she's been captured, she's been taken by the Tuscans, not just the men, but the women and the children, is he does that. I very nearly put up a slide and a graphic in here of Anakin carrying her wrapped body away from that, is because that moment, the Force called him back to go and free his mother. It was his attachment to her and what he had to do that kind of set him down the path to the dark side. And I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Shmi. That wasn't her fault. That wasn't her doing. That wasn't her thing. It, may well have been Anakin's destiny, is he's going to go down that road. That's one of those, self-fulfilling prophecies, is that was going to happen no matter what, but here's the impetus for it. But the importance of the mother figure. Another what if we could totally do is, would Luke have ended up going off with old Ben if Aunt Beru hadn't been killed? Would there have been something more to keep him there? Would he have had an attachment that would have done something else? That's that's another one that we can write down and go with later. But very, very important, the mother figures here. And I'll just hit on a couple of the others that we, like I said, this could go on for episodes and episodes, the talk of there, and we're getting on into this episode, but we've got other mothers. We've got Mala, which is Chewbacca's wife and Lumpy's mom. Even in the holiday special, they're thinking about family. That's a Star Wars thing. You were starting to say something, Catherine?
I was going to move on to Leia, but now that you mentioned Mala, there's not really much there. And
well, I was going to mention maybe Mala and Mara Jade and Ursa, and then we'll wrap it up with our general, our princess.
All right, yeah, I'm not sure how great of a mom Mala is, if she doesn't mind the grandfather sitting around doing those little alternative entertainments, we'll just say, for this family show in the room where the kids hanging out, running around playing.
It was the 70s. What do you know?
Yeah, it's the 70s. Yeah, that's great. But there wasn't, as I recall from last time we watched it, there wasn't too much of a story there from the mom's perspective. It's like they're there, she's cooking a lot in the kitchen because they're preparing for Life Day, and then the stormtroopers show up, and she doesn't really do a good job of hiding Lumpy from the stormtroopers. But yeah, she's just kind of there.
Yeah, my major take about that is having a mother figure was important enough in that Wookiee family. It was important enough for Life Day for them to create a family for Chewbacca, and we don't see anything else. But maybe it's not just the motherhood or whatever, but it's family as an overarching theme in Star Wars. Is Chewbacca needed a family? We needed to know. I am, I think, most disappointed in the fact that we have not yet to date gotten a whole lot more about Mara Jade. There was so much there when The Force Awakens came out. I was on the edge of my seat. It's like, okay, we're seeing old Luke. It's like, we got this young girl. Where did she come from? Is this going to be the story of, what is it, Jaina and Jason Solo, or is this coming from Ben? What was it, Ben? Yeah, Ben Skywalker. Yeah, but it didn't go that way. So, like I said, I would have liked to have seen that. Would have been, I think, Mara Jade in the EU and in the kind of stories that she was in would have rivaled Leia, Padme as like the most badass mom in Star Wars right there. I mean, the Emperor's hand.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, actually, when the cast listings for The Last Jedi came out, and I saw and they announced Laura Dern, I was thinking, hey, similar kind of age to Mark Hamill, could it be? Because that could have been a nice fit. There could have been many things, the what ifs, but Mara Jade definitely would have been a fantastic character to see. And there are so many good stories in the comics, in the novels, in video games that involve her character. And the fact that they borrowed a lot of elements from the stories around her make me think that, Disney, come on, lean back into the EU well and pick out one of the real jewels. Mara Jade, definitely one of those characters that would be great to see return.
Absolutely. And not all families, mother-daughter, mother-son relationships in Star Wars are, happy joy in life. Not that we've, Aunt Beru had a happy ending there, but I think we see in Rebels is the kind of tension that you have between Ursa Wren and Sabine is they're not shying away, thank you, in Filoni we trust, from realism. Let's have this kind of love relationship, but one that's kind of gone wrong, a disappointment in choices and things that Sabine has done, and how she expresses those, and is not shy about it. But we see that for what is that's a pretty good couple of 2 or 3 episode arc there. And then more stuff that we hope to see coming forward with properties that are coming out there is Hera Syndulla. Hera, the mother of, his name was on my list, Jason Syndulla. Yeah. Is, are we going to see eventually a live action Jason Syndulla? We've got the Ahsoka series coming out. Is he part of the search for Ezra that we presume, or the continuing fight against Thrawn? We're going to see how she's raised him, because I think the most of what we've seen of Jason Syndulla is it in video games? Is it where has that mention been?
I'm not sure. I only ever saw him in the epilogue of Rebels, so I don't really know anything about that or how that relationship turns out with Hera. So
yeah, well, like I said, that's one that it's another one of those little rabbit holes that could be gone down, and that we could see a whole lot more. It's a character in Hera that we've learned so many things about, but we haven't seen we've seen her as a mother. We've seen her as a mother to Ezra and a mother to Sabine. Probably more of a mother to Sabine than Ursa Wren herself that we've seen in at least canon and what's happened on screen. But another one of those things that we'd like to see more of.
Yeah,
All
he
right.
really was the glue behind the crew of the Ghost, as well as being the actual main pilot. So she has the kind of agency there that we hadn't really seen a female character take, at least a mother, at least up until Rebels, I think. So that was a really strong step in like this expansive storytelling, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I'm sure that we will see more of in the upcoming show, Rebels Revisited. And I look forward to that. And I hope any of you watching this are going to look forward to that as well. And that will be very interesting as, we may end up playing off of some of the things that they're talking about on there and going into our own deep dives on that. So let's wrap it up with the big one, our royalty. I remember her as royalty, our princess, our general. Let's talk about Leia Organa as a mother figure of Star Wars. Who wants to go first?
I would say that for what we do get to see of her, because obviously we don't get to see when she's mentioning Kylo, but with Rey, it's interesting because for her being a character who so much was looking for a parent, sort of finds one in Leia, and that's first hinted at really at the end of The Last Jedi when they're together aboard the Falcon. She's like, we have everything we need, and she's kind of looking to her for guidance. And in Episode 9, you see how they've been bonding quite a lot, and that Rey is finally able to find the confidence to kind of move forward from this. It's like she doesn't. I mean, granted, at that point, she's sort of past the need to find her actual parents anymore, but but you can tell that Leia's doing a great job there, and she's not like trying to force her into doing anything she doesn't want to do. Kind of like, with Kylo, she, as we know, sent him off, or Ben Solo, I should say, sent him off to Luke because she was kind of, afraid. Oh, he needs the training. What do I do? Whereas with Rey, she's not making that mistake. She's kind of letting Rey, do her own thing with the Jedi texts, and just kind of like in that shot that you picked there for Leia, it's almost like she's feeling almost like she's getting a second chance at this. It's like, Ben kind of dropped the ball a little bit with Rey. I'm doing the right thing this time.
Gio?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's maybe one of the underlying themes of the sequel trilogy that's really strong, whether it was intentional or not, is that people are open to second chances, and no matter what kind of lies in your present or immediate past or history, you can still kind of choose to forge a different route for you going forward. And Leia seems to be that character for Rey when she needs to be. It would have been good to see much more of Carrie Fisher on screen, of course. There are multi-factors into, unfortunately, why that didn't happen. But from what we see of Leia's character, she's initially in The Force Awakens the kind of forlorn mother, very rueful. When she reunites with Han, it's immediately thoughts go to their son and what's become of him and the kind of torment of the past. But in Rey and in Leia as the mother character towards Rey, there's that new relationship that's forged. And again, it's a shame that The Last Jedi kind of sidelined characters onto different planets and being light years apart. But that kind of evolution of their relationship just towards the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker is one of the better parts of it, in that it was not only explaining things for fans who were annoyed at power levels of training and experience, but the key part for me was that you have the strong female role model for Rey when she was lost. And it didn't have to be a female character, but the fact that Leia was there, I think, makes the idea behind the character in the narrative stronger, and that also ultimately, just skipping forward, some of the strongest stuff in The Rise of Skywalker, the better parts of it are to do with the mother-son element between Leia and then bringing Kylo back from the precipice, and resurrecting the Ben Solo within him. And that idea that I don't think it's really been confirmed anywhere, but that like Leia's final act in living was to maybe connect with Kylo Ren, with Ben Solo from so far away, and extract that notion, the memory of Han, in a really positive way. I think shows how pivotal her relationship was to Kylo Ren, even though we know that for one reason or another, Kylo Ren went off with the Knights of Ren and so on, but she trusted Luke to be able to guide him. There weren't that kind of blame of what happened to her son doesn't fall on her really. And one could argue that the vision, the kind of flashback that we have in Rise of Skywalker, where Luke and Leia are training on Endor, and she stops because she has that vision about how she would lose her son, I guess is a way of saying, she gave everything, almost as a parallel to Shmi, in her own different way, sacrificed everything to try and do the best for her son, similar to how Shmi gave everything to Anakin.
See, that's the kind of story, and one of those places that people could go is seeing, I think there are comics about some of it, but not all of it is Luke's Jedi Temple. We may see some more of that with the Grogu story, but you see the rise of Kylo Ren. I think that literally is a comic book in the Knights of Ren. But I don't want to see that live action without Carrie. I don't want to. I think we're done and we let that go, because I think I'm going to wrap it up with I respect what you guys have said, and I totally agree with how we see Leia, and it is the best parts of her relationship with Rey and not making the mistakes that she made with Ben. But I'm going to wrap it into real life, as we tend to try and do, and talk about Carrie as the mother of Star Wars for us Star Wars fans. Okay, is Carrie Fisher was not just our general and our princess on screen. She, in her life, became that to Star Wars fans, among other things. I mean, Carrie had problems. Carrie was never shy about telling people about Carrie's problems, but was such the strong female role model for a generation of women. Just to look up to her and those kinds of brash ways that she would be, and then later became the kind of cautionary tale and the example to tell you about struggling with mental health and struggling with addiction, and was able to be that kind of role model by the time she was that role model again in the sequel trilogies, and how devastating it was to each and every one of us. We watched last night for May the 4th. We watched, it'd be a couple nights ago when this airs, we watched for May the 4th, the 40th anniversary panel with the tribute to Carrie Fisher. And those of us who had seen the panel before and those of us who had not seen that panel, I mean, get teary in that tribute to this woman, this just outlandish, strong woman who created this fictional character that has meant that much to us. I mean, how amazing is that? I mean, she's just become the mother of Star Wars.
Yeah, another one that's really good to watch on that is the panel that Mark hosted in Celebration, where he's reading the letter that he wrote. He wrote a letter that he prepared in advance, and he's having a real hard time getting through it. And that was a great panel to remember.
Well, I think we're ready to wrap this kind of thing up. We've done our time for the day. We've celebrated our 1 year. Woo! And we've talked very much about the importance of family and the importance of mothers on this Mother's Day. And I want to wrap it up again in the real, is not talking about Star Wars at all. I want to talk about my real life mom. Okay, I'm a child of the 70s. My mom and my sister and I grew up single parent family. My mom was the be all end all there for us. with the addition of actually other strong females as my grandmother and my great grandmother, who were single grandmas and single great grandmas to us, and just how much my mom helped foster my love and passion for Star Wars. Is so many comic book conventions that she lugged me to that she had zero interest in. How, she is the one who took me to see Return of the Jedi in theaters for the very first time, and spent Christmases going out and finding the Wicket W. Warwick plush, to see my face for Christmas morning. So thank you to all the real moms who are out there fostering love for Star Wars, and my wife who tolerates me fostering this love for Star Wars in my daughters, and how they look up to this Leia's and the Hera Syndulas, and off the Mother's Day topic, how my daughter looks up to Jar Jar Binks. Don't even get me started. But so thank you all. Happy Mother's Day, and may the Force be with you.
Happy Mother's Day. May the Force be with you all.
Or be with you all.